Welcome to Recruit, Hire, Lead to Retain. I'm your host, Deborah Reynolds, owner of About Face Image Consulting, leadership coach, image, mindset, and transformation expert. And my co host is recruiting and hiring expert, owner of Best Culture Solutions, Tim Dick. Welcome, Tim.
Good morning. How are you today?
Oh my gosh, it's been a busy week. It's been a busy week, but I have to tell you, I'm excited about this topic today
Hmm.
because I think it's going to benefit a wide variety of people in terms of
Right.
audience. So, our topic today is about interviews,
Yeah.
essentially preparation, packaging your presence for interviews. And I think there's a lot of really great content in this that can support people of course, because the hiring market is still a challenge, right, Tim? I
For sure
mean,
it is. Yeah.
definitely. I mean, employers are looking for the right people, and they're wanting their people within those interviews to step up, to be more committed.
Yes.
And the interviewee wants to be able to be way more confident in how they present themselves, so they actually are the winners, the the successful candidate in a recruiting process. So,
Totally.
what are you noticing, Tim, in the interview situations? What are some of the biggest challenges that people are having?
I think I can sit here and talk to you about all the obvious things, right? Like don't be late, all this type of stuff. But here's the biggest thing that everybody struggles with, and that's that they're not specific enough in interviews. They're not action oriented enough. So what I mean by that is that, when you go into an interview, it's very important that you have a list, not necessarily a list, but a good grasp of like the specific situations that you faced in your career that resemble the specific situations that you might face in that job, and that you can relay stories about them, sharing about how you've been action oriented, and how you've solved those problems in the past. And that's where people really struggle. A lot of times I can tell you as an interviewer, I'll find a lot of people, you'll say, tell me about a time that this happened to you. And then people will launch into no specifics at all. They'll say, well, yeah, that happens all the time. And when that happened, this happened and all that stuff. But you really need to be specific in your interview if it's going to work.
I would agree with you. Those
Mhm.
specifics drill down into very specific skill sets that
Yeah,
the person has executed, demonstrated, confirmed that they actually know and understand. Um, and if that is not demonstrated in an interview situation, if they can't explain themselves, they can't justify, they can't back up content and information and connect the dots of an experience, an event as to what they learned, what were the lessons, how does that apply to that situation as well as to this situation and how it would benefit. If they can't connect those dots, then the thought that comes to mind for me as someone that helps people to prepare for in terms of presence, getting promoted, developing their leadership skills, is that they are lacking in their creativity,
yeah,
their ability to communicate, and essentially their ability to think effectively. And
that's
these are
right.
very important skill sets.
100%. Yeah, and it's funny, like sitting on the recruiter side of things, there's a lot of people that can give you generalities and all that stuff, but they don't really stick with you. And a trained interviewer is trained to look for somebody who can help with specifics or to give you specific answers. But even the untrained interviewer, and to be honest, I think about 80% of people who actually interview um, for for a role, or sorry, that are interviewing people for a role or hiring managers, are not trained on how to do that. They're not trained on how to interview. But even when um, you're dealing with an interviewer or working with an interviewer who isn't trained, those specific stories will stick out way more than just generalities. So I mean, I highly recommend it for many reasons, but the point is that it's much more memorable when you can be specific to people, right? And what happens is that the interviewer can start to envision you in the role that they're interviewing you for, because the stories are directly relatable, and so they start to say, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's kind of what we need in this role," and then they start to envision you in the job there, so it sticks with people.
I love that in the idea of visualizing in the role, because that visualization process of going, I could see this as being a big fit, because
Yeah.
the majority of people are in fact visual. What I love about this process too, when an interviewer is working with somebody, they must know and understand that this person could potentially be nervous and a little bit uncomfortable.
That's right.
And in that process, there needs to be an extension of grace,
Yep.
because I believe that there is a huge responsibility if somebody is not communicating well from across the table,
Hmm.
the interviewee is not expressing themselves well. It is the responsibility of the interviewer to communicate in such a way to be able to dig, and to pull out the very best information from the other person, to be able to put them at ease and help them to relax in that process.
Mm.
So, tell me a little bit about some of your experiences that you've had with some of your clients about how to put people at ease in that process.
Here's the biggest and best thing that I could always recommend to people, Deb, and I'm glad you asked this, is that, at the end of the day, it's important to remember that every single person in any interview is nervous, and they're nervous on both sides of the table. Both sides of the table want the process to go well. Frankly, both sides of the table need the process to go well if it can go well, because both sides have a need that each other can help each other with, right? Um, and so, when it comes to putting people's mind at ease, I've always said, just look, hey, at the end of the day, everybody is nervous. If even if people are really good at looking confident and presenting themselves not as nervous, the truth is that there are some nerves going on in there. They just may have had more opportunities to practice or have been in the process more often, um, and that's why they just don't seem as nervous. But everybody is nervous, and they're subconscious. They're all thinking about, what do I need to, how do I present myself as well as possible. Every single person is nervous in the interview, both the interviewer and the interviewee. And I have always found that keeping that in mind really helps you get over it a lot faster.
Yeah, I would agree that
Yeah.
aspect of the nervousness. What you mentioned something in there that was really key, in that
Mhm.
both parties are nervous, and there is an expectation. So I'm bringing up the point of intention, is that
Right.
nobody goes into a job with the intention of failing. Nobody goes into an interview with the intention of failing and blowing it. They are going in with the intention and the mindset initially of wanting it to go
Yeah.
well, expecting it to go well.
Yeah.
They may, in fact, self sabotage. They may, in fact, because of inexperience in an interview situation on both sides, the
Right.
interviewer and the interviewee,
Yeah.
they may blow the process because they don't have a confident way of how to move through the process, and what are the best things to be able to put forward, the
Right.
best pieces of content to put forward, the best way to express, how do they present themselves in terms of posture and confidence and
That's
voice,
right.
and what words to use, how to use tonality to engage, how to mirror, how to make those connections on a psychological unconscious level as well. Those factors are all very important, and we
Yeah.
can't overlook them. They will set the stage for what's going to come next in the interview.
Exactly. And a lot of times I think too, like, all those things are really important. But I think that when we overthink them or try to get too perfect with them, then we kind of miss the point, type of thing. And I think, if you focus on telling stories, if you focus on, um, being specific and stuff like that, because you're going to be more engaged when you're doing that, in and of itself, doing that is going to force you to improve in those areas anyway. The confidence, the the posture, all the things that you've mentioned there, Deb. Because, like, if you think about it, if you're confident, or sorry, if you have a lot of stories that you can tell, and you're ready for that, what's going to happen is that you're naturally going to become really engaged, very engaging, because you're going to light up. You're going, oh yeah, I can tell you about this. I can talk about people when they can do that, they get a lot more confident just on their own. Their posture improves, their tone improves, they're telling stories because they feel good that they've come equipped with a story for that, and being able to talk about our experiences gives us energy. And so that's, in my mind, if you can prepare for that, a lot of those other things kind of fall in line for you if you're ready with a bunch of stories. Absolutely.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important word there, natural process. And
Mm,
because people are trying to make it work, they are working very hard at making it perfect, like you were saying. And what the interviewer wants to see is a natural confidence, a natural way of presenting something from this energetic, positive point of view of these are the lessons I learned, these were the skill sets that I developed,
yeah.
and having that confidence show up naturally so that
Hmm.
you're essentially bringing out the very best part of yourself as an interviewee,
That's right.
and the interviewer is also bringing out the very best in you to be able to see that.
That's right.
So there's responsibility on both parts to present themselves in the very best light, which is the
Right.
best
Exactly.
emotional state of confidence, which is natural, right?
Yeah, you're totally right about that. And it's just, I always say to people, and I can't say it enough, like overthinking, how do I look? How, don't get me wrong, you have to think about it, but focus more on how am I telling stories, because everything will come out that way a lot better if you do. 100%.
Yeah, look, a person can be, they can miss the steps in terms of presentation and putting the overall package together. And I mean,
Hmm.
I've been doing this for 32 years of packaging
Yeah,
people on the exterior, but I include the mindset piece because if you don't have the congruency of the mindset piece and confidence on the inside matching the exterior and them coming together,
hmm,
you the authenticity is not there. You're
that's
going
right.
to It'll fall away under pressure of an interview. It will fall away very quickly. Well, people will
Exactly.
realize, you know what, they're just not quite as confident as they appear. And the idea here is to start off the process first in preparing for the interview of bringing out the best in who you are as a person and
Mm,
reminding yourself how confident you were in certain situations and bringing that mindset forward to this moment of the interview. That becomes very important. Stepping back into that form of confidence and assurance and being able to communicate in such a way that you're clear, that you're expressive, that you're showing some expression in your face and your body language. There's a little, not too much animation, but a little bit of animation and enthusiasm and excitement about the process.
exactly. And that's exactly it. And it goes all back to storytelling because it lights it up, right? And it brings it out of people. And I would say as well that it's incumbent on the interviewer to do their best to make people feel comfortable. If people aren't comfortable in a good way, not in a too comfortable way, but just comfortable in general, people don't perform. That works in the workplace. It also works in the job interview process. So I encourage, interviewers as well to focus on creating a situation where people feel comfortable. A lot of interviewers think that it's their job to to almost act like gatekeepers in some way, right? Like I'm a gatekeeper. I'm going to make this hard on you just to see if I can keep you on your toes and all that stuff. It doesn't do anything at the end of the day. It doesn't really help the process. It doesn't actually let you really find out what's really going on with that person or um, how they could truly perform. And you're actually doing yourself a disservice when you do that. So, um, yeah, so I can't emphasize that enough, how important it is just to, on both sides, to kind of create situations for a comfortable interviewing process.
Yeah, we do underestimate the comfort component and how critical that is. So when
Yeah.
somebody's nervous, and which is a natural process of the anticipation of going into an interview because they want to present the best part of themselves going forward, and they don't even know what the questions are going to be. They don't know what's expected of them often in interviews. The key here is to really control stress level. And from a
That's right.
mindset piece, because I want to get your input about how you prepare people for the interview situation. Managing the stress level, of course, when you're increasing your stress, you're increasing cortisol going through the body and through the
Right.
brain, and
Yeah.
that shuts off access to the right side of the brain and the prefrontal cortex, which is where we do our creative thinking, our planning, our organizing, our innovation, how we navigate different situations. So, for you as an interviewer, if you're trying to really navigate these questions really effectively, you have to have a solid way of
Hmm.
reducing your stress before the interview and then maintaining that calm, physical calm as well as mental calm while you're going through the interview. So, there's lots of different mindset exercises that can be done around that, Tim. But tell us
Yeah.
from your point of view of how you actually prepare people for that process of the interview and to
Yeah.
reduce the stress.
Great idea. Yeah, great question. So I mean, for us, it's, what we do is we work with people, like we're working with an interview coaching client to actually give them an outline of and a framework of how you need to tell those stories. And we actually help them go in there prepared with many, many different stories top of their mind. So that way, when they're in that interview and they're asked those questions, they can pull those stories out more easily and more quickly because they've prepared for it. They've taken notes on it. They've written it down in a book somewhere and they've jogged their memory on it. And what happens is that then they can go into the interview already, when they get asked a question about things, it's fresh in their mind. Where they've just done a whole bunch of work on stories around this issue. And to me, that's like the best way to prepare. One thing that people can also do that really helps is they could go to simply Google what types of interview questions can you expect for this type of job, and then based on that, you can very easily come up with different stories based on what you can expect them to ask, and then based on that, those are the types of stories that you want to record and write down so that way you're ready for them in the interview. And that has helped immensely. And I always tell people to come up with a good 20 different unique stories. Also, to come up with different stories that touch on aspects of leadership, not just how they got their specific job done, but things like conflict in the workplace, ethical dilemmas, how you handle disagreements maybe with your boss. Like, what do you do when you disagree with your boss? And times where you've disagreed with your boss and what you've done about it to demonstrate that you can offer value through an opinion in a professional way, right? But that's how I always recommend people do it, is to go through those stories and make sure that they're prepared for them.
The storytelling and the way that you do it with your clients is probably one of the most unique ways of preparing for an interview. And those 20 different preparation stories put you in a state and a mindset of knowing that you are confirming your confidence to step forward in a whole new light into this new position, knowing that you have something of value and that you have something concrete to offer this new company.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and you're bang on about that. And that's where those stories and being action oriented comes in, because it demonstrates how you've provided value to people before, and it makes it easier for people to see how you can provide value to them too.
Yeah, we underestimate that value component because we think, well, I'm only getting paid this amount in terms of a salary or this dollar per hour amount. However,
Mm-hmm.
it goes way beyond that. The key here is that you are to demonstrate and execute and provide value that goes far beyond the dollar value or the salary for the organization.
Exactly. Yeah, you're bang on about that. So, and at the end of the day, it's just, and people get really nervous about sharing too many stories. They don't want to sound like they're bragging or anything like that. And I get that. I always just say, people, you're not. You're just telling people how you've helped people in the past, so you can show people how you can help them in the future. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Nothing
and
wrong with that at
actually,
all.
you mentioned the word like bragging, or
Mm-hmm.
it's not a bragging component. It actually
Mm-hmm.
is very humbly
Mm-hmm.
expressed. And it's done with these are the lessons that I learned. These were tough
Mm-hmm.
lessons. And this is how it serves me going forward and how it serves the organization going forward.
That's right. And you're bang on about that. And that's exactly it. You're humbly shining a light on how you can help people. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody's asking you to put on a cape and say that you saved the world. You're just humbly shining a light on how you help people, right?
Yes, you know what? It's not an arrogance point of view. It's a quiet
Mm-mm.
confidence, which is showing that you have compassion and a desire to want to build great relationships and support other people on the team, support a company and organization to help them meet their goals. And we forget about that too, that when we're applying for a job and we accept the agreement, the contract to become an employee for an organization, you
Mm-hmm.
are essentially accepting the culture of the organization, the values of that organization. You are representing that company and that organization when you take on that job.
That's right.
And often we think we have these values as an individual, the company has these values. If they're in alignment, we've got this. And if those values are not in alignment, then we have the person, you could be butting heads literally with other
Oh,
people.
sure.
But what happens is there's this internal struggle inside of us going, this isn't the right place for me here. I really don't like this place. I'm having trouble fitting in. I really don't understand why they have this policy and this procedure and why they're doing this or why they have this vision. It's not really in line with my values. And
That's
so
right.
those coming in with that right mindset of, I'm here to honor the values, the vision, mission of this company and this organization.
Yeah.
And my values are aligned with this company, and understanding those values are really important. Many years ago, I had a colleague that I worked with that had done quite extensive interviewing, and he shared with me that the values that were missing in the workplace environment were loyalty, commitment, integrity, and trust. He
Right.
said those four values were very, very hard to find in people. They were also very difficult to assess in an interview situation accurately because people
They
are
are.
putting on their best behavior. And then once that the initial period of coming into the company is finished with, and they're a full-blown employee, now all of a sudden people are relaxing a little bit. It's kind of like, using the analogy of a marriage. You're on your best behavior. Then once you're married, the ring's on the finger. Then
Mm.
the true light comes out. People begin to
Hmm.
relax,
That's
and we're
right.
not actually seeing the real person in the interview.
That's
So
right.
how are you helping people to prepare from those values point of view to show up truly authentically?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, if you, again, it all boils down to being action oriented, right? Anybody can give you a bunch of platitudes about I have these values and I have those values. Doesn't mean it's true. Um, what you need to be able to do is demonstrate that you've acted on those values, right? And that is why, um, that is why giving examples and stories of action oriented behavior is so important. Is because you that is how you demonstrate that, right? You need to be able to show people that you're action oriented. If you want to show a set of values, show that you've got action, that you've worked on those values, and that you've actually taken action on those values. To me, that's the biggest thing. If people come to the interview and um, and they just can't tell you much about action, then all you have is a bunch of empty platitudes, right? Um, and that to me is the biggest thing, is that if you want to demonstrate those values, it's not that everything's going to be great. You're right. Like when you enter a relationship with somebody, if it's personal or work, um, there's a lot of hard work that goes with that, no matter what the environment is. It's those stories of action that tell you if somebody has the reliability and the resilience to around that particular skill set to follow through and put the work in when it's not as easy to do it on days where as others, right? And so to me, the best way, again, to show values or anything in an interview is really focus on those stories where you've had to dig deep and take action against a barrier or adversity every time.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that that's critically important. And the idea of, how we do anything is how we do everything is not truth. And
Exactly.
the idea is that there's going to be some things that you do that you're absolutely consistent and committed in doing a very specific way. And
Yep.
then there's other times you go, I probably get it right, maybe 60, 70, 80%. And
Sure.
there are times that I'm not so perfect. I fumble. I don't quite get it right. The idea is, do you have very specific mindset pieces where, the loyalty and the commitment, that commitment, which is a commitment to the organization, a commitment from a mindset individual point of view. I'm committed to making this work and we'll do whatever it takes. Under the umbrella of, but doing it in the right way, not to cause harm. In other words, to build people up and lift people up rather than bullying or tearing people down or destroying certain aspects of the corporate culture that are beautifully set in place.
Yeah.
So the whole mindset piece becomes a very important part of, who are you as a person? How do you as a whole present yourself? Because we have we could have, say, for example, 10 different characteristics in an individual. We might have 7 or 8 of them that would be phenomenal characteristics. Hey, we want this person, like they have these strengths. However, there's going to be 1, 2, or 3 characteristics that are going to be not so nice characteristics.
For
The
sure.
idea is that how do you leverage the strengths of those very positive characteristics that'll add value to the organization and team, creating
Exactly.
collaboration, and then minimizing those other characteristics or developing those minimal characteristics to become suitable, acceptable, and perhaps even excel in those areas.
Yeah, you're right about that. And the thing is, too, is that if you identify things very clearly and very properly, you can get a situation where, like, there's nobody's a 10 out of 10, right? But you can get a situation where you're getting 9 out of 10, right? Because you're focused in on what are the specific strengths that somebody in this role needs to have, and how do you find them? And I mean, being able to do that in an interview setting, I can tell you from my personal experience, if you can really dig in on that and what that means, what that looks like, and learn from as an interviewer, um, how to identify that and what it looks like, you can really find people that are going to be self-motivated to dig deep right in those tough moments, and make all the difference for you when um, when it's not as easy to do it today as it was yesterday, if that makes sense. But
Yeah, and a lot of it is the questions that we ask ourselves inside when we're going through those tough moments.
yeah,
How do I make this work? How do I add value here? And those critical questions that we ask ourselves are going to really define what the next steps are going to be and what kind of an impact we make.
totally,
So,
Deb. Yeah.
any last words about the topic today? Interviewing, preparation, packaging your presence for interviews.
Yeah.
What would you like to tell our audience?
Well, let's talk about it on both sides. What I would tell the audience is, from an interviewee perspective, if you're the one going in there for the job, get those stories, get a good inventory of stories that are kind of related to the skill set needed in the job, and come up with about 20 of them that you can share with people. Come up with 20 stories that you can share with your interviewer about what you've done in the role, and and make sure that you're ready with them. Basically, at the end of the day, if you are the interviewer, come up with an objective way to adjudicate the interview based on the stories that you hear, and find out if that person is actually going to be the person that you need in that role by being action oriented. You need action oriented people as an employer, and it's those stories that tell you if somebody is or not. So I can't recommend enough for interviewers to go get trained. I'm trained in something called motivational based interviewing, and having that literally completely reversed all the ways that I looked at interviews, and frankly, it reversed our results. We did a lot better after we implemented that than we did before. So those are on both sides of the table. That's what I would say. I would say, if you are an interviewee, be action oriented, tell those stories. If you're an interviewer, look for people who are, and that's going to pay off for both sides in dividends and droves.
Beautiful. Love
Yeah.
that. Thank you, Tim. This has been another amazing segment of Recruit, Hire, Lead to Retain. I'm Deborah Reynolds, your host. My co-host, Tim Dick. We are here to support you, the audience, those of you that are needing to be interviewed, those companies and organizations that are wanting to hire and to bring on great talent to be able to support your company to grow and to scale. We're here to support you. So make it a great day.
See everybody.